audio. Okay, this is trust your intuition. Cool. I'm gonna sync the audio and video in a little bit. I was gonna use a really fancy, and by fancy I mean like a just a regular DSLR camera, but it created too much friction. I was thinking too much about the setup and the lighting, which is not a bad thing to think about. But I noticed it does create friction between thought and action. It becomes too much, too many walls put up. So I said, screw it. Let's just put up the phone and at least record some good sound, some good audio. Because if there is one thing I learned in film school, it is that audio is often more important than video. Your video can look like a potato, but if your audio sucks, then the video is garbage, essentially. So, what do I want to talk about today? Well, one thing that's been coming up is the idea of intuition. And I mean, there's so many directions I can take this in, but to root it in what's real for me right now, I moved, and I'm going to talk about this a lot. I have, and I'm going to talk about this a lot because it's important, to California back in August of 2022. And that was a tough decision to make. And it really came down to making that decision because I was tired of the life that I was living. I was tired of the mundane. I feel like I wasn't moving. I was stagnant. And in many ways, I still am in some areas. But that really pushed me forward. And the decision to do that was ultimately like, I have to do this. And when it comes down to making decisions, it's so often not about what happens if I do make this decision, but what happens if I don't make the decision I feel like I need to make? What are the consequences? Not what is the vision, but what is the anti vision of not taking action? And so for me, it was like not taking action meant staying in my hometown and working as a delivery driver for Amazon and not making any forward momentum or progress towards what I wanted to accomplish. And now, a year plus later, after having moved there and seeing what it takes and what the scene is like, I moved there for filmmaking, right? But I haven't really done a whole lot of filmmaking out there. And really looking back now, I don't know that it was so much I moved to get closer to film, but to get closer to myself. What I mean by that is making a decision that I felt like was a positive move for me for my growth. And now that I've come back, I'm here for 2 weeks. I'm like, wow, actually, maybe coming back is the move. I've My direction has changed a bit, and I've always been really enamored and interested by social media, content creation, making videos, making films, and the whole independent aspect of that. I really, really crave freedom and independence. That's my number one desire right now is freedom. And so it's making decisions aligned with that top value of freedom. Okay. What decision can I make to get me closer to the vision of freedom that I have for myself? And when I think of intuition, intuition for me is often feeling. And for me, my intuition, I feel most in my solar plexus area. Like it's just kind of like a yes or a no. And often you hear, is it a fuck yes or is it a fuck no? If it's not a fuck yes, it's a no. I remember talking to one of my friends about this a while back, last spring, and the decision I was making at that time was whether or not to pursue a long distance relationship with somebody and try to make that happen. And it became a question of, it is a fuck yes for me, but I don't know that I want to do it. Right. So then we really shifted that and we said, okay, is it a, it could be a fuck yes, but then the question after that is, but am I willing to? And so when you're faced with decisions, even if it is a fuck yes, it's like, yeah, fuck yes, I want to do this, or I feel really good about this, but am I willing to pay the price? Because everything that we desire has a cost. If you want a six pack, it requires time spent exercising, time spent preparing your meals, time spent counting your macros, time spent um, shopping for groceries, money spent on those groceries, on those supplements. And so there is a cost factor to be weighed. And many times in the past, I've I've bounced around between things. I've done this and I've done this and I've really dabbled. And what it comes down to is there's a couple of things to that, which I can discuss in another video, but is realizing what your nature is and using your intuition to discover that nature. For me, I'm a multi-passionate person. You can look into your human design if you want, if you feel called to it, and that is kind of how you interact with the world, right? And so for me, I'm a manifesting generator. I'm really good at manifesting things into reality, and I have multiple passions. And if I'm not pursuing those passions and the things that really light me up inside, then I feel like I'm moving against my nature. And there's more resistance, more friction, more frustration. That's my anti vision. That's my anti self that then comes to the surface. And so when you're making decisions, you have to realize, what is my nature? Who am I? Right. And Alan Watts, a famous philosopher, once said, trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. So you can't, not that you can't, but I found it hard to be like, this is who I am. I am this because I am a constantly changing, shifting thing. And how do you describe who you are when who you are is indescribable? And so that becomes kind of a philosophical quandary. And that's a bit of a digression there. But using your intuition to not only make decisions, but to find the depth within who you actually are as a person. What is my nature? How do I make decisions? Where do I feel it in my body? Because a lot of the times we resort to the mind when the body often has the answer we're seeking. And this has been the case for me, especially as of late, realizing like, this is how I operate. This is what makes the most sense for me. And realize too that what you feel, your intuition, the decisions you make, the vision you have is yours, not anybody else's. Don't make the decisions for others, not for your parents, not for your family, not for your friends. And be careful when you share those visions too. When you share that truth to other people, if it's not in a safe space, and what I mean by safe space is a container of people who are not going to judge you, who are self aware enough to realize that they have their own struggles and challenges and visions, and not to project that onto you. You're not impose their limitations onto you. If you're in this container, you can share it with those people, so be it. But if not, be very mindful. And so this is quite a nuanced topic, but I found it's often best to cultivate a period, whether it's daily or weekly, for silent reflection, to check in with yourself. You can journal, but you can also sit with yourself and say, how do I feel about how things are going? And for me, I felt that I need to do hard things to feel alive. That means cold showers. That means hard workouts. That means plant medicine ceremonies. That means really facing my fear. That's what lights me up and makes me feel alive. And discerning that that's what makes me feel alive and not getting that confused with a cycle of self-suffering. One of my friends told me that. He's like, it seems like this is a few years ago. You're addicted to suffering. And that is not the place you want to be at, where you have to punish yourself and say, okay, I want to do this. And if I don't hit it, I'm going to punish myself. That's a perfectionist tendency that isn't cohesive, that isn't conductive to growth at all. It's actually the opposite of that. And so use your intuition to feel through these things, to realize who you are, to realize your nature, and to find the path that works best for you, even if it doesn't make sense to other people. Because at the end of the day, we're born alone, we die alone, but we spend the time we're alive with other people. creating, coexisting, co-creating with others. And so you have to find that thing that makes you feel alive using your intuition, kind of comparing that against your logic to some degree. Like, hey, does this make sense? Am I willing to commit to this long enough to see a payoff if that's what I want? And not being too attached to the outcome, but falling in love with the process. I really enjoy the process of making these videos, and my intuition says keep doing it. And I'm fighting against my logic here because my logic is saying, well, these videos, there's no script. You're not analyzing for retention. You're not designing a really complex thumbnail. Therefore, how are you going to find success with this? That's what my logic is saying. My body says, hey, keep doing you, keep making these because I really enjoy this. And that's where logic can sometimes be self sabotaging when we fall too much into the programs, the conditioning, and lose touch with who we are inside. So I hope that there's been something of value in this video. Like I just said, I really enjoy making these. And so if you resonate, let me know in the comments. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on anything I've talked about in this video. Let me know if there's anything you want to hear in future videos. And I would love it. I'd really, really appreciate it if you could like this video and hit that subscribe button because I have a lot of fun things planned ahead and would love for you to be part of them. So with that, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.